Magie Cook is the former owner of Magie Salsa. I say former owner because this is a salsa company that has been sold in Wal-Mart's, Whole Foods, across the United States. And the company was acquired twice, once by a collection of brands, and then the second time by Campbell's for over $100 million, which is impressive enough, right? The entrepreneur that starts a business and gets acquired for over $100 million is insanely impressive. But to add to that, Maggie grew up in Mexico City as an orphan and was homeless for a while before even starting this company, winning a salsa competition and using that money to fund the business. She hustled, she got into Whole Foods using cold sales. It was a very interesting story that I'm sure you will enjoy. Here's my conversation with Magie Cook. This really makes me want to get into the salsa business. You want to try some of my salsa? She just makes it sound so easy, that's the thing. I gotta get into some kind of packaged goods business, all right? That's how I feel right now after listening to this interview. Hopefully you also feel just as inspired. Let's jump into it. Here's my conversation with Magie Cook. Welcome to the podcast, Maggie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Unbelievable story.
Yes, I know.
So I think we'll talk more about the orphan stuff as it comes up, but I actually really want to focus on, to start, the salsa company.
Yes.
So how did that grow? So for instance, you were talking about it went from nothing to a multi-million-dollar business within 4 years. So what did those 4 years look like, and how did that happen?
Well, the first 4 years were more of a struggle because when I was starting my company, I mean, first of all, I was living in West Virginia and there's hardly no Hispanic population there. And for me to introduce a fresh pico de gallo salsa in West Virginia, it was like nobody wanted to do business with me because they're like, what is that? And they were more into, the canned salsas that you cook and not the fresh stuff. So I received a lot of, not backlash, but there wasn't a lot of support. And it was really hard to try to convince supermarkets and people that it was good until they tried it. And it's really interesting because I spend zero marketing dollars in my company ever. And it just grew because people loved it and they just started talking about it. And it just spread like that.
So what did that look like? So when people were turning you down, like how were you targeting these type of companies? Like what type of companies were you talking to? Like how did that actually work? Like what was that hustle?
Well, what I did was I started selling the product, and I would make the product in 1 gallon batches, and I would sell it to my friends and reinvest that money because I only had $800, and then it just began to grow. And then I decided one day, okay, what if I just cold call these supermarkets and see what they say? And so I started calling. I made up a long list of stores to call, from the smallest that were around me to the bigger ones that were around me in that area. And I got into a calling spree and I got like close to 90 no's, like rejection after rejection after rejection. And so one of the things that I've learned in my business career is that if something doesn't work, you just change your approach. So what I did was I put down the list for about a day, and then I called local manufacturers to see how they had gotten their products into their stores. And they told me the same thing. They're not going to, listen to you. You're not established. It took us 3 or 4 years to get our products into the store. So what I did after that, I said, okay, I'm going to take this list and turn it upside down just to see what happens. And in that list, to me, I had written the largest natural organics supermarket in the United States. And to me, that was the Whole Foods market. So I took that list and I turned it upside down and I called them. And I remember just saying, hey, my name is Maria Magdalena de la Cruz Garcia. I have an awesome pico de gallo de salsa. And I think you guys will love it. And that was my message. That's just very simple. And I got a call the next day. I remember I was parked in the city center in Charleston in my little car. And this guy calls and says, hey, is this Maggie? I said, yeah. He says, this is Eric with Whole Foods. And I'm like, oh my God. And he says, we heard about you. We want to know more. When can you come? And I literally said, I asked, when do you guys meet next? And he said, tomorrow at 9 a.m. I mean, this call was placed at 6 p.m. the day before, and I didn't have any salsa. So I said, I'll be there. But I just rushed to the kitchen, made some product, and drove all night long. Didn't sleep. I didn't care. And I came into their main distribution center in Maryland. And presented the products and they were just blown away. And the next thing they asked me is, when can we have your products? And I was like, well, how much do you need? And at that time I was making about, I think it was 250 pounds per week for my friends. And their first order was for 10,000 pounds of salsa.
Oh, wow.
One of the helpers that I had, we counted about 60,000 tomatoes. We cut all that in 1 week. It took us a whole week. And then, there was a lot of challenges, but I was willing to do whatever it took to make it a success. I didn't have any money. The banks wouldn't loan me any money because I had nothing to show for. So I went to Whole Foods and I asked for a contract and I said, listen, I can supply this product to you, but I need something that shows that you're going to pay me so that I can borrow this money. So I went to friends. I said, look, this is the contract. They pay me in a week. I need 20 grand for cost of goods. That's containers, product, anything that goes into the making the product, including the ingredients. And they let me borrow 20 grand. Within a week, Whole Foods paid me 40 grand. I returned that 20 grand. And then week after week after week, it just kept multiplying. And it's like one of those things where if I would have stopped, where people are telling me like, you're not making any money, just get a job or something, I would have never been that far. Gone that far.
Well, I love that idea too of like, so the small companies turn you down. The people that you'd think would be most likely to help you turned you down, and then you called like the biggest store, and the biggest store were the most receptive to it.
Yeah, well, it was weird because I'm sure it was weird for them because nobody's heard of Fresh Salsa, especially in West Virginia. They don't know what it is. And I can't just say it's good because they have to try it, and you can't do that over the phone. And they don't trust you because they don't know you. So you just I was just constantly pushing and pushing, and I wasn't giving up. When I met with the FDA in the Department of Agriculture, and they looked at my products and to approve them for distribution, they looked at me and said, your product is not going to make it. And I was like, what are you talking about? He says, you have a 10-day shelf life. That product is not going to make it. You're not going to be able to ship it and be good and shelf stable, good time for people to actually consume it. And years later, I went to a festival in the city center, and I saw some of the FDA people there, and they were like, remember when we told you that you wouldn't make it to cook the salsa like everybody else? They're like, I'm so glad you didn't listen to us. But what I understood is that you just never know in this world. There's like so much, especially with technology, you just don't know how much possibilities are there. I went from making product without anything on it, all natural or some of it organic, to finding equipment like MAP, modified atmosphere packaging, which injects hydrogen into the container and seals it to kill the residual oxygen index inside of it so that it would preserve it for longer. And then I found the technology. It's like $1 million for one machine, where you put you can take fresh avocado, mush it, put it in the container, put it in this machine, and it submits into pressures below sea level, and it kills everything in it, every kind of bacteria, anything, and it lasts 40 to 60 days green, the avocado. So it's really amazing what technology is out there. So I knew that things would just get better. I would just need to figure out and find out what I needed to do. But it was really, really hard. And the really cool thing is that once the really big break for me, and I'm going to tell you, like, at times I felt alone, and it was so hard. It was so hard, but I just kept pressing, and it just started to turn for me. And then the really cool thing with Whole Foods is that as soon as I was in Whole Foods, now, Kroger wanted it. Now Harris Teeter wanted it. Now all the other supermarkets, because Whole Foods, at that time, it still is considered a very high-end supermarket. And then Walmart came along, and they actually called me, and I thought it was a prank. But it's so hard to get into Walmart. And when I went to Bentonville, when they called me and I went up there, this buyer said, do you see that line of people going in? And I was like, yeah. He says, all those customers that are going in to sell their products, that means a lot of other products are going to come out. Like, they're going to take them out of the shelf. That's how hard it is. And here I was by invite, and meeting the main guy that controlled all the Sam's and Walmarts, telling me, you are the Sam Walton of West Virginia. I'm like, what? But it was such an amazing experience. But it took a lot of tough mentality and being set on what I wanted. being very mindful. And I knew what I wanted and I was just going to follow it. And if it didn't work for me, I was just going to change my approach until I made it.
So what did that pitching process look like after you got into Whole Foods? After you fulfilled the order, what was the next step for you to try to get more customers?
The next step really was make more product because they just kept calling and calling and just kept growing and growing. But I will tell you one thing, and the really funny thing that happened with Whole Foods, that week that we were making that product, I had to look for a truck and I got my truck driver's license. I mean, I did everything and I couldn't find a truck and I finally found one. And it was like the oldest, rustiest, worse than a Mexican truck I could ever find. I don't even know how this thing was legal. I mean, there's wires sticking out of the dashboard. The seat wouldn't adjust. It was rusty. And I ended up duct taping a piece of wood block on my foot because I couldn't reach the pedals. And out of a mirror that was falling off on the right side of the truck, I had bought duct tape because I got stuck in the road. I couldn't, on a hill in West Virginia, and I couldn't pull the truck over. So I ended up driving with a piece of wood block. And then I realized that the gas tank had a leak. My diesel was going down very quickly. So I ended up stopping a lot at the trucker section and the gas stations and coming down with that piece of wood block. And those truckers were giving me the weird eye, because I was walking like I had a heel on or something. But it didn't matter to me that the moment. I still have video somewhere when I delivered my first product to Whole Foods. I was just so joyful. It was like 3 a.m. and they were just banging on the truck. And it was just such an amazing experience. After that, it just started to grow tremendously to the point that I grew out of it was like an old KFC kitchen to a 20,000 square foot facility to a bigger facility with 2 floors. And then I had a crew of team members that were producing 24 hours a day. And I was actually sleeping in the office in a little bed thing that I bought and unloading and loading and driving and finding people to make more product. It was just so awesome and so amazing. And I went from being homeless to really having all this to the point that I felt like unworthy of it because also how I grew up, I didn't have anything growing up. And I had to take ownership of that and the value that I do have and possess.
So was that more outbound, or was Kroger and all these other grocery stores, were they coming to you after you were in Whole Foods, or was that more outbound?
Absolutely.
They were coming to you?
No, absolutely. Yes. What happened, I think I attended one food trade show and that gave me a lot of visibility. And I think it was more of people trying the products and going to the supermarkets and telling them, hey, you need to carry this. And I would get a lot of customers that would call me and tell me, why aren't you in these supermarkets? And I was like, I'm not there yet. And so they would call, and that's how I would get into more and more supermarkets. That's how it grew.
It's interesting. So this was what, 2009, 2008?
I started the company in 2004, and it really took off in 2007. 2007 was when Whole Foods Market really took it to the next level.
So why not sell online? It's interesting you went full supermarket. It seems like that really paid off. Most people I know that run food businesses, at least like one of my friends runs an artisan chocolate business. He stopped pitching stores completely because he makes so much more money just like selling direct to consumers online. It's interesting you went to stores.
Yeah, I mean, I did look at that option. However, because my products they're fresh. They have no preservatives, no nothing. So the biggest challenge for that was that I had to get a box and then a cooler within a box. Then I had to get either dry ice or ice packs. And then you would fit, 4 containers and it would cost $80 to ship. So I did do that for customers that absolutely wanted it and they didn't care to pay the price. But it was just not feasible for the consumer to, for the company to make money that way because it was just too expensive.
That makes sense, yeah. So you kind of had to sell to stores in order to survive.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what did that acquisition by Campbell's Soup look like? Because you were acquired, it was twice, right? Like you were acquired by one company that was acquired by Campbell's.
Yes.
So what did that process look like?
Oh, it was amazing. When I sold the company, they brought in a bunch of semi-tractor trailers to transport the equipment and everything that I had. I had hundreds of thousands worth of equipment for making salsas and cheese dips and a process of cheese dip that I invented. So they took everything, and I was in the process of setting up in their facilities and then running the production there. And I was working with over 500 employees. And then that's when Campbell's came in and was interested in buying the companies. But it was such an amazing experience because the growth was so exponential, the results of it. But the biggest joy for me was the people, because we had built such an amazing culture that cared. And if I showed you video of the security cameras that we had, and actually somebody taped it, every door that I would go into these production areas, my team members would come in and hug me or pat me in the back or like high five. Like I would be flocked because that was the energy, that was there.
Mhm.
Such a wonderful experience. And then when that happened, of course, for 2 years I couldn't make any products, a part of the contract. And of course, those 2 years are over, but I don't plan on going into the salsa business because we're the food business that's refrigerated, because it's very tough. I mean, if you would be 1 degree lower than the temperature the range that you gave them, you would be rejected. 80 to 100 grand of product loaded in a truck because of that. So it was really, really hard, really tough.
Were you given an option to join Campbell's, or was that a clean exit?
It was a clean exit.
That's interesting. What about the first acquisition? Because you got acquired once, and then you were working with them until the Campbell's acquisition, right?
Yes.
So what did that look like?
Well, that was kind of the same process. What I did is I took over the team there, the employees, and I was running the culture plus running my products and running the business. The transition was not as smooth as I thought, because once everything changes location in systems, you have to be on your feet to, make sure that the products and Walmarts and Whole Foods and all these and Sam's Clubs are not, because the thing with these products is the buyers hate when you don't supply, when you don't give them what they asked for or what they signed you up for, because that means that there's going to be empty space in the shelves, and they hate that because they want to sell the products. So I just had to be on my feet. I just had to be on my feet and continue to do the best that we could, and everything happened really well.
How did you find the company that bought you?
We actually met in a trade show, and the owner came to me and he says, "You remind me so much of my wife." I'm like, "Oh." And then I met his wife, and these people, Jack Aronson and Annette Aronson, they're like the most amazing people ever. Such kindred spirits, and they help so many people. There's huge philanthropists also, and we just hit it off.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What did that look like? So you're an independent business owner. You meet these guys at a trade show. How long did it take before they bought your company?
I think it was within a year. Within a year, I had a business partner that I was working with, and I bought this person out. And as soon as I did that, we moved the operations up there to Michigan. And that's where Campbell's came in and took over.
Oh, wow. Were you looking at other buyers before these guys?
No, I wasn't even interested in looking at anybody else. To me, it was a really good exit strategy, because I was at a point where there's just so much that I want to do to help people, including with the things that I did with the orphanage in Mexico. And it was just great. And, even my team members that I had when I was in West Virginia, they were all taken care of very well. Every one of them, I made sure that they would have a job and a really good pay before, so they would be, completely fine. So the whole thing it was really about caring and making the right decisions to move something forward that was just going to get bigger.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, then I want to talk about, so you were talking about the orphanage before. You spent almost all the money that you made during the acquisition on orphans, right?
Yes, I did.
So tell me more about that. What did you do? What motivated the philanthropy? Like, that entire story would be amazing to hear.
Well, I think that the thing that really hit me hard was, I mean, I grew up in an orphanage, and I didn't have food for up to 2 weeks. And it was so painful. I don't know if you've been hungry for 2 weeks or more, and that I became a hunter, and I would just, hunt my own food with my brothers. And to just hear these kids struggle, not only that, having cartel activity involved where kids were being taken for child trafficking. Uh, and then to see these kids, I have photos of all these kids that were severely raped. It's so hard to talk about because you're talking about like 2 and 4 year old girls and boys, and they're like destroyed. Like, uh, I when I heard that a band of 50 people were coming to take these kids, I flew to Mexico, and it was the fastest flight I've ever flown in my life. I was there within 5 hours. I don't know how, but it was like instantly when that happened. I booked flights, went to Mexico, arrived, and I made preparations to. The thing is, people know me in those areas because I was always very like tough, not tough, physically tough, and like my energy is strong. So people know not to mess with me, I guess. But what I did is, as soon as I went down there, there was barricades in the entrance and exits of the city of Ario. Military was there. They were fighting the cartel, and then I what I did was I brought a really expensive phone system that I installed because the orphanage there's no coverage, so you would have to go on top of a tree to get coverage, and I wanted to make sure that you had communication in case something happened. So the first thing that I did was I went to the federales and I made friends with them with the comandante, and I asked, I said, can you guys please come and protect us? And he says, we can't guarantee that because we're here on government business. We went to the military as well. They said the same thing, but the federales did say, if we are able to come, we will come. And so for 30 days, we were telling the villagers to spread the word that I was there and that we were armed and ready, but I was just saying that to buy us more time. What I did was when I started hearing the bullets, shots, and things, because we live in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. Like the first city is 45 minutes away, and this is in a mountainous region in Michoacan. And so what I did was I spread the word that we're here and armed and ready. And all I had was a 38 special handgun, and my brother had a homemade Hechiza shotgun. Hechiza is like a homemade shotgun that was like a 16 gauge. That's all we had. The moment we started hearing things, commotions, and gunshots, I put all the kids in one room, and boys and girls. It was probably like a 10 by 20 room, and they slept there while me and him would sleep in the concrete floor right outside with our guns, just waiting. And it was so hard because try not sleeping and being afraid that something's going to happen. But then I discovered that there was a dog. They call her La Muñeca, the doll. And it was like a really aggressive dog, but she was so like good to me. Like she was very friendly to me. So I realized that she was barking at anything that moved. So I grabbed her and put a rope around her neck and tied her around my waist because it gave me some peace that, okay, maybe I can sleep. If something happens, she'll jerk me and bark and I'll wake up. So that's really how we operated. One night it really got really close because we saw some people coming through the mountains, and the kids started to freak out and run towards me. And I was really telling, there was only like other young adults there that I was telling them, you have to like not show fear because you don't want the kids to feel afraid. But it was hard. And the people that were coming down the mountains were people who were taking care of avocado orchards, but we started running towards them. The thing about that experience is that I felt like I could die in any moment. But to me, it was so worth it because to see these kids, how they were, there's no way, like I would rather die. There's no way that I would let anybody take them. The federales ended up coming in, and I actually have photos. I think I have photos in my video online of their vehicles, and they were patrolling the orphanage. They came every evening after a little while, and with their sirens on, and we gave them rooms. I made them coffee at 5 a.m, cookies, anything, because I wanted them back. I wanted to make them as comfortable as possible. As soon as that security happened, I know that they were coming for them, but I knew that we spooked them out. I really do know because I heard a lot of talk in the countryside from the peasants, and I'm just so glad that I got to do that. As soon as I left, they came in and grabbed some kids. As soon as I left, because I had installed the phone system, they were able to call the military and the federales, and they flew their helicopters there. and they grabbed the people that took these kids and took them in, and everybody was safe. As soon as I left, that happened.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was that the only philanthropic move? Because you were doing a whole bunch for these orphans, right?
Yes. Yes. Ever since I started my business, I was providing foods to other orphanages. But what happened was that growing up, I had the realization that when people gave us food, we were dependent on a lot of donations from the U.S. When people would send money, they would spend money on other things instead of feeding us, and we would suffer anyway. So when I started giving money, I realized that the same thing was happening. So I changed my approach and I said, okay, I actually created a movement called the Pound for Pound movement. For every pound of salsa people would buy, I would donate a pound of food to orphan kids. And so how that worked is that I would literally go to Mexico and I went to Jamaica, to different places to buy the goods and store them in their storage because I could see it. I could see that they would be fed. And from then on, I don't know that I trust a lot of nonprofits unless I really know who's running them, because people tend to take advantage of that. And so, but yeah, that's what we did. And it was a huge blessing we touched a lot of people's lives with that.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Maggie, if people wanted to find you online, where would they go?
They can go to maggiecook.com, Maggie with 1G, and also truelifehero.com. It's a new site a new business that we just started.
Cool. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode. If you want more content like this, subscribe to the podcast. If you want more in-depth B2B sales training, of course, check out the YouTube channel, b2bsalestraining.org. And if you need marketing support for your digital agency, Experiment 27 helps digital agencies grow their number of leads by building lead generation systems. That is Experiment27.com. There's also notes on all the podcast episodes there and free sales courses, which we've gotten some very good feedback about. You can also check out my social media. I'm on Twitter, Alex Berman with no E, ALX Berman, or Instagram, Alex Berman 1. Till the next episode, I will see you later.